ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Next Deal podcast. As always, I've got Justin Dawsey here. Justin.
What up?
And I'm Vince Hall. Today we have Trevor Oldham here with us, and he is the founder and the CEO of podcastyou.com. And what Trevor does is he meets with real estate investors and he gets them hooked up and connected with top performing podcasts. And so Trevor, welcome to the show, dude, and give us a quick introduction, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show today and to speak to both of you. Like you mentioned, Podcasting You started that 7 years ago, and it's been a wild ride ever since then.
Yeah, awesome. And how did you get started in this?
Yeah, so it was actually back in 2015, and I was running a podcast of my own. Honestly, just thought it'd be cool to go out there and start my own show. So I was interviewing folks in like the entrepreneur space, real estate investor space, but I was bootstrapping that company. I didn't really have much money to my name. I was a freshman in college in 2015, so I was just starting, that sort of process. And after about 2 years of doing that, I was like, hey, I want to start to make some money here. Like, I'm not making any money from this podcast, but at the same time, I was the one booking the guests. I was editing the shows. I was doing the show notes, basically everything that goes into a podcast. So started freelancing out those skills that I had learned and came across a turnkey investor out of LA. She wanted to go out there and get booked on podcasts, started working with her, got her booked on podcasts. And again, just started finding like more freelance clients to do it. About a year into it, was like, hey, this could actually maybe be a business. I never expected to be in PR or anything like that. Brought on the first employee. And then I think it was like 3 or 4 years in, we finally developed a website. It was just picking up freelance clients for like 2 or 3 years. And then once we were doing like 6 figures a year, I was like, okay, maybe we should actually build a website and have some sort of online presence. And then, probably about 4 years ago, we just decided, let's just go all in on real estate investors. We love working with investors. I like real estate myself. Just made more sense for us because, it's hard when you would be working with investors and health coaches and politicians and business coaches and all these different entrepreneurs out there. Where it was like, you work with a new client, then you got to find all these new podcasts for them where you don't have those pre-existing established relationships. So we just went all in with real estate, and then that broadened our horizon because I'm sure, as you guys know, real estate sounds easy, but then you got your multifamily, you got your fix and flips, your wholesalers, your mobile home park, your CPAs, attorneys, your self-directed IRA, you have your EQRP, you have your whole life insurance specialist. So it's a broad spectrum of clients that we worked with. But yeah, that's sort of how it grew over the last 7 years. And again, I never expected it to grow where it is today. Or it was like, hey, I've started 3 different companies. None of them have made money. This company's making money. Like, let's just roll with it. And then, it just continued to grow and, built out the team from there.
So you do the podcastyou.com, but then you're also a real estate investor yourself as well, where you've done some more passive investment. So tell us a little bit about what that's been, what you've invested in, and kind of what your journey has been there too.
Yeah, most certainly. So it sounds like the stereotypical W-2 employee. I'm running this company, and I like running the company. It's obviously profitable, but I'm like, I don't want to be doing this for another 20, 30 years. It's fairly easy at this point to get people booked on podcasts. So I was sort of looking at like, what's that next step that I can make where I'm not relying 100% on the income coming in from my podcasting business. And it's almost like, let's diversify. So you can invest in 401k IRAs. But at that point, I'm like, I can't touch that until I'm 59 and a half. That doesn't really line up with what I'm looking for. So how could I start to generate cash flow now? But I'm very busy. Me and my wife, we have a new daughter. Or I knew at the time when I was really starting to look into this. She's now 11 months, so coming up on a year now. And I was like, I don't want to be active when it comes to investing in real estate. How can I be passive investing in real estate? And that's when I started to learn about more your syndication offerings. And I don't want to go through like Crowd Street where you get in for like $500. I mean, that was gonna, that just, for me to invest $500, it just didn't seem like a good platform to invest with. And so then I ended up, and then I talked to the syndicators, and you find the ones 25, 50K, 100K. And I was like, okay, that seems more reasonable. That seems more realistic. So initially it was just wanting to build up some cash flow. So first investment was triple net lease properties. So I invested in like a fund through a company, and it's like 5 different properties. So it's like a vet office is one of them. And the other commercial buildings are the corporate grade A tenants. You have Dollar General, Family Dollar, AutoZone as your tenants, just stable cash flow, 7 to 10%. Right now I'm getting 7% on it. Would anticipate as the built-in rent increases go up, get that to 10%. Wanted more cash flow invested in a mortgage note fund. And through that, it's like 9.2%. Again, not a ton of risk there. Pretty simple. Just looking to get the cash flow started, wanting to get some income coming in. So I know, like, hey, if I put 50K into these two deals, so 25K each, I'm going to have like $400 a month coming in just to like get me started, just to get my feet wet. And then I wanted to bite off a little bit more than that. So I'm in a multifamily deal, just your typical value add deal out in Texas. That one's been going good. No pause distributions, no capital calls or anything like that. And then another deal, a self-storage development deal as well. So kind of just mixing up the asset classes. I don't know exactly which one I wanted to go into. It was more like I almost like looking at like, who do I trust to invest with? And I talked to so many different sponsors and operators, and these happen to be like the four people I felt most comfortable with, and they just happen to be in four different asset classes. So yeah, it's been good. I mean, my goal when I was crunching the numbers, like, hey, if I can invest 50K a year for the next 7 years, and then if you're looking at like maybe this deal will double in 5 years, and maybe the triple net lease deal will double in that 7 years, that'll give me that financial freedom where just cover my basic monthly expenses. Not that I would want to stop working, because I mean, $4,000 a month isn't going to do a whole lot at the end of the day, but it's enough to cover like our mortgage payment, our utilities, and different things like that. So that's sort of the way I structured it and looked at it. And that was just a stable 8% return, just getting 8% a year on these investments, 50K a year. That'll get me to enough where I could, have more flexible options. So yeah, that's why I like doing that passive investing, where I'm not on the active side. I don't have to deal with tenants and different things like that. I can just,
you're not hunting
I don't have to worry about all those problems. I got enough problems in my business to worry about with team members and clients. I'd rather, not worry about all that stuff. So it's been good being a passive investor.
Nice. How long have you been doing that for now?
Yeah, so it's been since October 22. That was my first investment. Okay. Probably been researching probably about 3 or 4 months prior to that, and then I came across the deal, and I wanted to get not that I would invest for tax purposes, but it was like the last time you could get the 100% depreciation before it could start to unwind down a little bit. So I got into it in December of 22, I think that, or October 22. That was the first deal, just to get that little extra depreciation expense on it or benefit from it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's awesome. There's
so for.
Go ahead.
I think we definitely are delayed just a little bit.
No, you're good.
Yeah, for those of you that are listening, I don't know if you caught what he said, but he researched for a little while and then went into it. And, so get into that research period, but actually take action. There's so many people that we talk to, on the daily that are researching, trying to learn, going to this coaching class, watching this YouTube video, going to this, and, not taking any action. So Trevor, I think it's awesome that you did your research and then actually took some action.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like what was really most important to me, was just talking to the different operators and sponsors. I mean, in the beginning, I was like, what's the difference between a 506C, 506B deal? I mean, it was like, that was my basic knowledge at the time, was like bare bones real estate. And then like I just forced myself to grow. So like underwrite the deals on my own to see if they made sense, depending on what the pro forma of what the operator and sponsor was going to be sending to me. Just having to understand all the lingo, like what's an IRR? How is that calculated? How is that different from your average annual return? So just different things like that. You have to learn, like you mentioned, just putting yourself out there. I remember talking to sponsors, and they'd be asking me like, what questions do you have for me? I'd be like, I don't know what questions I should be asking you. So different things like that. But then you start to get a feel over time, like what's a good sponsor, who's not a good sponsor, who's trustworthy, who's not trustworthy. Like there's a deal, I didn't invest with it because it sounded too good to be true. It was a 200% carbon depreciation recapture investment. So for me, that was in over my head. I just didn't fully understand it. So if you put 100K into the deal, you offer a 200K, turns out to be a Ponzi scheme. So like that's an example where I was like, I don't understand what's going on. That seems too good to be true. And then obviously at the end of the day, too good to be true. I mean, if I'm trying to get a higher IRR, I know I got to take on more risk. So if it's like a class A property and you're telling me I can get a 40% IRR, that just that doesn't seem right. I would expect like maybe 12% max. So yeah, and like you mentioned, just doing that due diligence, self-educating yourself, and then really just putting yourself out there for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if someone's starting to do this research and looking into like doing syndication stuff, because maybe they're in a full-time job and they right? They want the same kind of thing that you went for on this. Where would you recommend for people to learn about it? Like, is there any resources that you use to learn about it? And then like where to even start finding investment deals that might be out there? Because I think that's something that even I don't really know, because if you need help finding a single family property or a small multifamily, I could get those for you all day, left and right. That's what I do. But I don't know much about the syndication game on that. So how would you kind of recommend that for people that are getting started on the research and then getting involved?
Yeah, so for me, I joined a community called Left Field Investors, and it's a membership group. It's fairly inexpensive. It's like $200 a year to be a part of the community. And the benefit of it is people are always talking about different sponsors and their feedback on them. They'll be asking questions. Hey, has anyone invested with this sponsor? They have a list of their preferred sponsors. So this would be people that have had good success investing with them. They also have like a red flag sponsor section. These would be like the one I mentioned to you that ended up being a Ponzi scheme. Like, hey, never invest. I mean, those people will probably be in prison, so you can't invest with them. But there's some where they're just very bad at communicating and different things like that. That was a great resource for me. Bigger Pockets. You know, everyone knows Bigger Pockets in the real. If you're in the real estate space even a little while, that was a good spot for me to just learn. I read a book, Hands Off Investor by Brian Burke. He goes all into the syndication offering. That one was very beneficial for me. And then just joining networking groups. I mean, I found a ton on LinkedIn, and I would just join them probably like 3 to 4 a week for like an hour and just be like, hey, I'm new to the real estate space. I'm looking to get into syndications as a passive investor. Like, what do you have to offer? I mean, because investors, like, they always want to meet passive investors. They want always to raise more capital. So it was just by putting that out there, just by networking. But yeah, the biggest one was probably just joining the LFI community that I had mentioned, because I could just pour over all the forums, see who's invested in who. And even today, I still go on it like once a day just to say, oh, this is a new company I have never even heard of. Let me go to their website. Oh, they're interesting. Let me book a discovery call with them. Okay, now I have them on a discovery call, and then I can, find more about their business model. How's their track record? Have they gone full cycle? Have they had any failures, capital calls, different things like that? So it was just really being a part of that community really broadened my horizon and really just allowed me to just speed up my process so much quicker. Like, I know I mentioned that Ponzi scheme. I was talking to a few folks out in Boston when I was visiting in person, and they were the ones that actually brought that up and were like, this just sounds way too good to be true. Where if you're a naive investor like myself who hadn't made my first deal yet, that sounds very good to me. Oh, I can put in 100K as and write off 200K if I had that professional tax status, or I can write it off all the way down to zero. That might sound good for the unsophisticated investor or someone that has that high W-2 income. So just being a part of that almost like mastermind community was very beneficial for me.
Got it. So you almost got both out of that by doing the research and finding like good people to actually invest with that your money's mostly safe, because it is investing, right? Like, but you have a higher likelihood of it succeeding, right? Okay, cool. That's awesome. I wanted to go back to the podcast stuff too, because we get a lot of guests that are on here that are coming on to just get out there more, get more practice, and talk about what they're doing. Some of them are social media influencers. Some of them are just wanting to share what they know about real estate, and people are picking up lenders and things like that from going out on podcasts like that. So if someone is looking to do that and get involved in podcasting and getting their stuff out there more, where would you, obviously they could hire you, right? And come in and work with you guys, but what are some recommendations you could give people if they're just kind of bootstrapping, getting started, and want to get out there more?
Yeah, so I would say first and foremost, one, just be having a quality microphone. You don't want to be doing it with just your AirPods in there. Trying to do it, even worse than AirPods would just be recording.
So true.
It would just be recording it like with no microphone or anything like that. So you want to make sure that's setting down. So you could go on, like right now I'm using like the Blue Yeti mic. I bought it for like maybe $130 on Amazon. Yeah. There's other affordable.
That's the first one I had, the little Yeti mic.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely.
I had the Yeti like the little globe one that like just sits on the stand. The snowball. That's the one I had. That was the first one I started with. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's definitely cost effective. That's like $50. So make sure you have that down. And then from there, it would be like, okay, like what value could I provide by going on these podcasts, because like if you're going on these podcasts, people don't want to just be like a straight line pitch for your product or service. You're on the podcast to provide value. So like what I recommend is you like write down like, what are 5 questions I want a podcast host to ask me? What are 5 topics that I can talk about? And then just like get your thoughts down on paper. And then you can see like, okay, this is what I want to talk about. Here's who I want to talk to. Because I mean, yeah, there's 2 million podcasts. So maybe in the real estate space, there's a couple hundred of them, but they're all different niches. I know I was talking to you about earlier, like who we work with. There's podcasts. You have your general real estate podcast. Then you have your multifamily specific podcast. You have your wholesaling specific podcast. So you just want to figure out who your target audience is. And then from there, you want to have a nice professional one sheet. And that's just like a media kit. That could be it's basically like you would put in like your full bio on it. You would put links to your social media, any past podcast experiences, questions like I mentioned, topics you want to talk about. And you go out, you could hire someone on Fiverr, Upwork. I know we have someone from our team do it, but I mean, if you're really looking cost effective, it might run $20. If that, It might not be like the best looking one, but at least you're like, you got something down there, because podcast
Well,
hosts
and you could easily go to Canva too and get some templates for that kind of stuff too, if you're like really just trying to get started with it. I think that's what we did at first, and then we had our graphic designer tweak it a little bit. But like even places like that. But like you said, Fiverr could cost you $15-$20 to have somebody else do it for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's super cost effective, and then really from there, just be building on a list of podcasts that you think you would want to be a guest on. And there's a couple of tools. I'm trying to think if you're bootstrapping it. So if you're really bootstrapping it, you'd probably want to use iTunes, and you could go on iTunes and search like real estate investing podcast, and then you could search like single family rental podcast, just different things like that. If you have a little bit of a budget, so there's 2 different tools. So there's one called Raphonic. We pay for that as a company to research podcasts, and it's really cool. You can export lists, but I think it runs us like $300 as a team to do it. So obviously that's not too cost efficient. If you are like have a budget, what I would recommend is another tool called Listen Notes, and that one's probably like $150 a month, but they offer like 2-day free trials, and it's like $10 a day. So for $20, you can get access. And the reason you want to do it is because you can filter like how many episodes does this podcast have. So if you're newer, maybe you want to go on podcasts that have 5 to 20 episodes. So a newer show, maybe you want to go on shows that have, maybe they've only been around a month or 2. You want to get some practice on those shows, where if you don't pay for it, it could show you podcasts that have the keyword term real estate investing, but haven't had an episode in 2 years. So you don't want to reach out to those shows. That it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So I recommend 2 of those research tools. Obviously, iTunes is free, but the nice part about these tools is it'll give you the contact information of the podcast host or someone within the company, which is nice. It's not always 100% accurate. I mean, you could tell like the name of the podcast host and the name of the email that they're providing for you is 2 totally different people or 2 totally different companies. So you have to do a little extra due diligence from time to time, but it tries to make it as easy as possible. And then really from there, just reaching out to the shows. I mean, that's what I did when I got myself booked on podcasts. I don't even know if I had a one sheet back in the day. I think I just had a pitch. I wrote down, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I like about your podcast. Here's, my background. Here's why you should have me on. Here are the topics I can talk about. And then just, blasted it out there. I would say to make your pitch specific to each single podcast that you pitch out there. So you're not having like a cookie cutter pitch, where I always just like to put something specific to the podcast host. Like, hey, I recently checked out your podcast. I really enjoyed your episode with X, Y, and Z. Here's why I enjoyed the episode, and just putting something specific like that. And if you want to go like that next extra step,
catches their eye a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then like I find this one's a little more time intensive, but if you're struggling to get booked on shows or in the beginning, leave them a 5-star review on iTunes. Podcast hosts always like nice 5-star reviews. So I'll literally just write a 5-star review, screenshot it, be like, hey, as an appreciation for your podcast, here's a 5-star review. Literally send them the screenshot that I wrote for their podcast, and then send that off to them. And I find even if they don't have availability or I'm just not a fit for the show, podcast hosts still like that, and they'll at least get back to me. So I find that helps as well as a nice little tip. And I don't think too many people do that, again, just because it takes more time to send it. But it's definitely worth it if you're struggling a little bit to send out and get some bookings for yourself.
I love that idea, because that's something that if someone did that to me, I'd be like, oh, let's talk. like, because this is still newer. Like we started this back in November?
October,
November. Yeah. Somewhere right around there. And like somebody did that, I'd be like, yeah, let's come on, let's talk. Like, as long as you got something good to talk about, let's talk about it. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. That's awesome.
So when your clients are coming to you, Trevor, are they giving you a list of potential podcasts they would like to be on, or are you saying, hey, let me kind of go out there, do some research for you, I'll give you 5 to 10 podcasts and you can kind of pick from there? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much how you described it. So sometimes our clients will come to us with like a preset list of podcasts, and we'll take a look through it to see how reasonable it is. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
they'll send over like the Joe Rogan podcast and be like, "Hey, I'll work with you guys if you can get me booked." I can't
I
tell
better
you.
be on here in 3 weeks.
I have like one person a week ask me if I can get them booked on the Joe Rogan podcast. And it's like it's not. I mean, it's not like real estate specific. You know, at least ask for like the Bigger Pockets podcast or something. You know, not that that podcast is easy to get on, but nonetheless, yeah, we'll see if they have a list. A lot of the times we have like a massive database at this point, so we'll go through. So like if a client we're booking on 10 podcasts, we'll typically have them approve like 20 podcasts just to give us a little leeway in case like a host doesn't get back to us or they're just all booked up for whatever reason, or they just don't like our client for whatever reason. For the most part, the hosts are fine, other than I would say the whole life banking people. That's very hit or miss. Either hosts like to have them on or they just hate that whole concept. But yeah, for the most part, we'll build out a list for them and we'll get their approval, have them review it, and then really take it from there and really just work that list to get them booked.
Mm-hmm. I've been on, I know Justin's been on podcasts like this too, where, you know, like people will ask us, like the actual podcast host will reach out and say, hey, you know, I'm looking for a guest. Would you want to be on the podcast? And then I'll go on it and they send me like a pre, you know, like checklist of questions saying, hey, answer these. And then you get to the podcast and he's literally like going down the list. It's like so robotic. It's very non-conversational. And then, you know, 25 minutes, it's done. You're like, oh, okay. You know, like, so I imagine you're vetting those types of people out. Even if they have a crap load of episodes, you know, like I've been on podcasts have had a crap load of episodes, but they're literally every single like time. They're just the same thing, just rotated differently a little bit, you know?
Yeah, and you could definitely tell. I mean, you could just look at a podcast. Like the first giveaway is like how long are the episodes? So if the podcast episode's like 20 minutes, you know it's going to be a fairly quick podcast. It's probably preset questions. It's not going to be too conversational. And then usually they're daily podcasts or podcasts that produce an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a lot, like 3 times a week. Like it's going to be hard for that person to research so much. And I know there's a couple of podcasts in the real estate space that do weekly shows. So I would imagine they just probably have the same preset questions and they're just hammering through the list, you know, on them, and then just getting through them. So I mean, you could really tell again how long are the podcast episodes, how many shows they produce weekly.
That's why we don't have a script for this at all. Like we built it just like let's have a conversation. We've like you filled out a little pre-call or
About
pre-show
you
like survey, about you that we'll kind of use and pull data out of for questions. But yeah, that was one of our big things when we started this is we're like, we don't want it to be one of those podcasts where it's like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And what's your, you know, and then the same like cheesy question at the end or whatever, you know, like, cause that's just my style. I know some people like those, but for me, I'm like, it doesn't seem real. It seems kind of scripted, a little, I don't know, seems more fake to me personally. That's just my opinion. But
and we like getting into things outside of real estate on this podcast as well, just to make it more real for people. Like, yes, everybody is here doing real estate. This is how you make money. This is how you put food on the table. But we like to talk about other things. Like there's a guest that bought and sold rodeo bulls, and we talked about that. You know? So you know, we like to talk about other things, just to make it you know, more personable and real, because we are doing other things. Like if you're living and breathing real estate, you're going to get burned out pretty quick if you're not doing other things. So
so I cut out for a second
yeah
at the end there. Cool. Trevor, I was curious. One of the tools you put on here that I always like to try and talk about if we can is like tools or tech that you can't live without. You put before sunset. I've never heard of that before.
Me either.
So tell me a little bit about that. I'm curious.
Yeah, most certainly. So this was actually my wife that recommended this to me. So basically what I do is very inefficient with my time. And what I mean by that is pretty much every Friday, I'm going to go through and I'm going to write down and break down my week for the following week of everything that I need to get done. So obviously some weeks I don't get some stuff done. So I take out my notebook and I'll write down, rewrite them over and over and over again. So basically it would take me like 2 hours on Fridays to basically plan my whole week, my Monday through Friday of what's going on. And what's cool about before sunset is one, I can write my entire to-do list and break it down by day, but then I can import my calendar and it'll show me when I have availability to get these certain tasks done. And that's what I really like about it. So I could be like, okay, I'm on this podcast interview. I'll block out 2 hours of my time for it. Okay, when I'm done, here's the task that I can get done between this and maybe my next interview later this afternoon. And it's really nice about that. And then I can set repeatable tasks. Like there's certain things like I create YouTube content every Monday. So I just set that as a repeatable task. Like I'm going to record 4 videos. Like that's my big goal on Mondays, and then just going to repeat every single week. And then I just check it off. So it's really nice. And I got it through AppSumo. I don't know if they're still running a promotion there, but it was like super cost effective. I mean, I think I bought like maybe 200, I don't know if it was $200, might have been like $100 for like lifetime access to it. So now like when it comes to like planning my week, I do it again. I still do it on Fridays. It takes me like 30 minutes in the morning instead of like 2 hours to go through and rewrite everything and figure out, okay, when do I have calls, which day, or maybe do I have a bunch of calls on Tuesday, or do I have a bunch of calls on Wednesday and I don't have as many on Thursday? So it just makes planning my week just so much easier. And then I can put in like personal tasks, like right now I put like get a Mother's Day card, something like that, where I don't want to forget that task. I'll be in trouble. So I can put the personal task there just to continue to remind me, like, okay, I got to go out this weekend and get one for my wife. So just things like that. It's nice being able to have the business tasks and then have one of those 2 personal tasks, set up in it. But yeah, no, it's a really efficient tool. It's been a game changer for me when it comes to planning and structuring my day.
Yeah.
I just looked it up.
Yeah, me too. What's the AI part of it? Like, what's it doing for you in that regard?
Yeah, so I think the AI part of it is where if you wanted to, so you put in your schedule. So like, let's say you had a meeting like 9 to 10, and then you were free like, 12, or let's say you were free 12 to 4 in the day and you had meetings outside of that. It'll schedule your tasks automatically for you. So you could put like, okay, I think recording YouTube videos is going to be 2 hours. So it would go through and be like, here's the 2 hours within your free time on Monday where you could record these videos based on your schedule. So like, I don't even have to think, where I could literally come in and be like, okay, here's what's going on through my entire day. So I know like, okay, from, 9 to 10, I have an interview. From 11 to 12, I have another interview. From 12 to 4 or 12 to 2, YouTube videos, 2 to 4, LinkedIn content. Because that's how I blocked it. And then maybe 4 to 5, another call. So it helps me like just plan for like when I have that time. So I'm not like wasting any time during my day. I'm like, okay, this is done. Now on to the next task. And I find it just helps me structure it pretty efficiently.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah. So if you guys are listening,
new stuff.
Yeah. If you guys are listening, their website is beforesunset.ai is what it looks like here. And this looks cool. It kind of reminds me of, I use an app for our email called Superhuman. Have you ever used that before? That's my favorite. I'll never use Gmail's native platform again. But it's like $30 a month, I think. And it makes my life so much easier when it comes to going through emails, reminding me about emails. You can set your calendar stuff directly in the platform as well, which makes it nice and easy it's kind of cool if you're typing and you're like, I think I have time on Friday. It'll pop up your calendar for Friday and show you what's available.
Cool.
Yeah. So like you could do that and then literally add it to your calendar within that platform. So yeah, it's awesome. So love tools like that. So I might have to check this out because this looks like it would make my life a lot easier, actually.
Yeah, I recommend
Susie would probably like me to have this.
Yeah. Like put on there, remember to spend time with Susie every day, and it will throw it on there for you. Oh, that's awesome. Well, cool. Is there just kind of wrapping up, Trevor, is there any like final thoughts you would say for people, or what's a good way for people to reach out to you guys if they're interested in getting booked? Or even, I was looking at your guys' site, you do multiple services for getting booked on podcasts or getting guests for your podcast as well, which I'm going to reach out to you and talk to you a little bit more about because I want to test it out. So what's a good way for people to reach out to you? Or is there any other kind of like final parting shots you want to let go?
Yeah, most certainly. So I'll say one like reach out thing, just go to our website, podcastingu.com, podcastingyu.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Just my name, Trevor Oldham. Always happy to chat there. And really the last parting thought I would be is I find that people, whether hosting their own show, going on podcasts, it can be uncomfortable. And I found for me, even running a podcast booking agency and being in the podcasting space for 9 years now, it was still uncomfortable. I mean, now I'm fine with it. But I did a Toastmasters class or club, and I found that was very helpful for me, just doing public speaking. I took a public speaking course when I was in college, and that was definitely uncomfortable with getting up there and doing different things for the class and talking them through. And I found that public speaking course was good, but definitely Toastmasters, more corporate professionals, better setting, I would say, overall than a dorm. But yeah, I found that was beneficial for me. So if you are like nervous about going on podcasts or even hosting your own show, definitely recommend joining like a Toastmasters club and just getting that practice of public speaking. That was very beneficial for me.
No, that's a great point. That's another reason why I wanted to start this is like I always felt awkward on camera, and like we film ads like a couple times a year here in St. Louis where we'll have a film crew fly out and Vinny will be in them, I'll be in them. And like I always felt so awkward on them because I'm like, I don't know where to look. There's a camera pointing at me. I don't know what the hell to do. And Vinny's really good at it. Just like, I don't know if it's naturally or you've just been doing it forever from all the other stuff, but doing it on here, like when we filmed earlier this year, was like a night and day difference. I was like, okay, cool. Just the repetition and practice and talking and doing all that kind of stuff makes it so much easier doing Toastmasters. Mm-hmm. And I had somebody at one point tell me two different tricks. One was my brother is when he was on camera, he would take his contacts out. So like he couldn't see himself. And he's like, everything was kind of blurry and he's just talking, like looking out here talking. He's like, for some reason that helped me, which I thought was funny. And then the other one was from somebody else that said, like, if you want to get into podcasts or being on podcasts and you're really nervous about it, just record yourself talking and like pretend you're on one. Like no one's going to see this but you. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to be weird at first, but you can kind of watch yourself back and see like, oh, I need to smile more. I'm too tight or I'm not, I'm not very comfortable. Here's some things I could kind of look at. And that I've never tried it, but I've heard it's very helpful as well.
Yeah, I think those I haven't heard the contact trick before.
Dude, me neither. When he told me that, I was like, that's a first. Never heard that one before.
That's a smart strategy, though.
Yeah. His like, I don't know if you can tell, but if you go back to like his first YouTube videos ever that he did, it's literally what he would do is take his contacts out. He knew the camera was over here somewhere and would just talk. He's like, I can't see anything, so I'm just here talking. I was like, that's actually a really funny way to do it. Well, cool. Well, Trevor, I really appreciate you coming on for this today. Like I said, I'm going to reach out to you and chat a little bit more about not only myself getting on other podcasts, but booking other guests as well for this. I think would be super helpful. So, really appreciate you guys. If you are listening to this and interested, check them out at podcastingu.com and reach out to Trevor, get some help with that kind of stuff. And again, thanks for coming on today, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
See you guys.